Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Melissa.
This month, we're talking about Archie vs. Predator, the comics crossover event we all never knew we wanted. This book was written by Alex Campi, illustrated by Fernando Ruiz, Rich Kozlowski, and Jason Millett, and lettered by John Workman. Now, in case you need a refresher, Archie vs. Predator pits everyone's favorite teenagers against a teenage predator who stalks the gang from the tropics back to Riverdale High. As the Predator works his way through the Riverdale gang, we get to see how the iconic teenagers we know and love handle becoming prey for one of the galaxy's deadliest hunters. So not knowing much about Predators, I'm not sure if the galaxy is the accurate term there. The universes, I don't know, galaxy seemed fine, right?
I think it's galaxy.
We'll get into who knows what about Predators, I think, later on in the podcast. But first, I want to welcome Melissa from the SJW Comic Book Club to the podcast. Melissa, tell our listeners a little about yourself and a little bit about the SJW Comic Book Club.
It's great to be here. I'm so happy that I'm able to bring this joy of a comic to your podcast because
it is a delight, by the way.
It is. So I'm Melissa with the SJW Comic Book Club, a weekly book club style podcast where three friends discuss a story arc in comics from a literary and progressive point of view. Like most successful book clubs, we have three key elements: books, friends, and booze. That's our intro. So it's very interesting.
Legit intro.
Yeah, Patton and I were fortunate enough to join all three of you guys, you, Monte, and Veronica, for a discussion of House of M, which I think went places we were not all sure it was going to go when we started, but
more pop jokes than I was ready for. Yeah,
was very, very fun. It was quite a hoot. So
yeah, and so if you go to our channel and you find the House of M episode, it is truly just a fun hang with five people talking about a fun comic.
So before we get into our discussion questions, which we all prepared ahead of time because we're such good podcast co-hosts.
Professionals, yes.
Yes. I always ask Melissa when we have someone on the podcast for the first time especially, but again, because this book is so kind of out there, like what made you want to discuss this book of all books with us on your first outing on Waiting on the Trade?
Well, this is personally one of my favorite stories that we have read on the SJW Comic Book Club. It's just, I also read Archie as a teenage girl, as most people who read Archie are teenage girls, but like I had so many of the books. I like begged my mom to buy them when we were at the checkout at the grocery store. I like still have a bunch. I cannot let them go. And this perfect blend of the Archie gang that I know and love and the Predator, which honestly, I didn't watch the Predator movie until very recently, just so I had a little bit of context. But it's just so fun and amazing that I just have to share it with everybody, anybody, and everybody at any moment. I'm ready to share this with them.
Yeah, so you don't actually usually pick the books on SJW Comic Book Club, right? Did you pick this one when you guys talked about it there, or did someone else pick it?
Yeah, and to make it a little bit more complicated, we actually changed our name after the second season. We were the Bottle Comic, and then that one is actually Archie versus Predators on under that name. But yeah, there was like Monte and Veronica. It's kind of like weird and lame to actually explain why I don't pick any comics on the podcast, but they asked me like, well, do you want to? And I was like, well, yeah, let's read this Archie versus Predator one, and because I found it and I really wanted to read it, and so that was, I have to be like really into something before I suggest it for the podcast, because I just let Monte and Veronica do it.
I mean, sometimes it's nice to let other people drive, right? Yeah. This entire podcast is basically Pat and I letting other people drive for the most part. So
yeah, sometimes it's a good role to be in.
Yeah, I actually am not. I've never really been a huge Archie person. Like, I've definitely read probably more than your average person, obviously, but like not a ton. I definitely don't have a bunch of Archie books. And I've still never watched Predator. I was gonna try to watch it before the recording, but I didn't get around to it. So but I still really loved this comic.
I think there's something for everyone in this comic. But also, it's okay if you didn't like it. I will only like cry after the podcast.
No, I think having talked to Pat a little bit beforehand, like I believe Pat also really enjoyed this comic, correct?
It was a trip.
It certainly was.
Pat, before we get into the real discussion questions, like what's your familiarity with Archie, Predator, or the word verses?
Archie, I know who he is. I knew like the gist, like the main characters, Jughead, Veronica, Betty. I know that
You almost listed them in the correct order there, by the way. You're close.
there's a correct order.
Well, I mean, if you're ranking them in terms of best characters, you
I don't need to
you
rank
almost did.
everything. I don't have that compulsion like some people, Matthew.
Why do we even do a podcast where we don't rank things? I don't.
Good lord. Good lord. No, so I had a general sense. I never watched. Was it Somerville? What's the
Riverdale?
River. Yes, that
fair.
one.
We've never experienced the intense
highs and lows
of high school football.
drama. Yes.
To be fair, it's totally different from the comic. It's just
From what
like
I've heard, it's insane. But
yeah, it is actually insane. Monte actually sent me a like a GIF from the show, and it's something about a character named Reggie has a parallel universe Reggie there at the same time, and now there's two Reggies due to this parallel universe situation. And Monte was like, "What is happening on Riverdale?"
That is like par for the course for Archie comics. From what I know of Archie comics, like literal Jughead is part of a time traveling like police force. So
the like original ones are kind of have that like 1950s feel. When I hosted the Archie versus Predator episode, I like brought out all the fun facts of like exactly how traditional Archie comics has been for so long. It really has been since the 2000s that they've introduced certain people of color, because there weren't that many. There was a gay character in like 2013 or something, and they've radicalized in the last 20 years.
Yeah, there was like a moment in time where Archie really decided to like open up and just try some really weird stuff, which again, like the old Archie comics I think are weirder than we probably think, but like the thing I always think of is it's like I don't remember what it's called exactly, but it's a comic where Archie is married to Veronica in one timeline and married to Betty in the other timeline, and the comic has both timelines in it, which is super cool. But the last issue of the comic works for both timelines somehow.
Oh. Yeah, I never got into those versions of Archie's, just like the ones that you buy at the grocery store checkout.
Sure.
Yes, that actually kind of. I guess first, Pat, do you have any familiarity with the Predator?
I've watched the movie. Yes, watched the Predator. So.
All right, good. You can be our Predator expert.
No, I don't want that. It's been decades.
I guess Melissa's saying that the version of Archie she's most familiar with is like the newsstand supermarket checkout Archie. Kind of actually leads into my question first, which is not how I thought this podcast was going to go, but we lived a surprise. So my question was, how do you guys feel about this comic using like the default grocery store pick it up in digest magazine style Archie art style to depict very like shocking violence? Like, do you think using the typical Archie art style for this comic enhances it, or does it detract from the story? Like, do you think there's a better version of this comic that uses a different art style, or do you think that this is the art style for this story?
I think a lot of the charm of the comic book would be lost if it didn't have this art style.
Oh yeah.
Like the jokes of the visceral like gore that is on the page, like all of that would be gone, and that's the majority of the comic book, I feel.
Yeah, I do think that it is pretty much the gag, right? Like the contrast between what's happening on the page and the fact that it's happening in like this cartoony art style. Like the first time I saw a spine, I was like, what is happening in this Archie comic book?
You read it, and when I was reading it, I thought like, okay, this is where the laugh track would come in. Like they're holding up the severed head of Jughead in a in a vending machine, and they
See,
say
to
a
me, it still
one-liner in the
actually
laugh
is
track.
super serious. Like I never got like a laugh track moment.
Oh,
Like,
always. No one, like none of the characters are taking anything seriously.
well, that's just because that's how the Archie universe operates, right? Like,
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's jokes that wouldn't land if it were a more serious tone, for sure. Like the whole emoji kind of symbols that the
Oh, for the
teenage
predator
predator
vision.
is,
Yeah,
yeah, the predator vision. Like one has like the night vision, but then he kind of like thinks in emojis because he's a teenager. And I just think that that playfulness, like it only adds, it just like elevates the hilarity of this comic and the absurdity.
very early on, it's page 20 in the first issue, where there's blood splashing down on the teens on the previous page, and then the camera kind of like cuts up, and it's the dismembered bodies of the blossoms. And it's like,
Yes.
oh, okay, we're gonna see rib cages in this comic. Like that's where we're
Yeah.
at.
Oh yeah. There's so many really funny jokes that come out, well, not come out of nowhere. Like they just like they're kind of nonstop, but then they just like sprinkle in the like gore and the atrocities. And some of the characters kind of sometimes take a moment to be like, this is like really messed up.
but not for long
And
though.
this is, yeah, not for very long, because then you get like Mecha Archie coming in. You get like the Sabrina the Teenage Witch just exploding. Like it's
Yeah, the thing does read really quickly too, and I think that is helped along by the art style because I think that again, this sort of more newspapery, like digest style art style really lends itself to clear action that you understand. And in this case, instead of it being a dance off at the beach, it's Pop Tate getting his head blown off. Like it's just like
yeah.
it's the same. It is such a weird contrast, and I think we all kind of agree that that is part of what makes the gag. But part of why I asked the question is because when Archie Comics started opening up and doing sort of these weird comics, and I think Melissa, you have some familiarity with some of these too. Like, not all of these weird Archie comics end up using the actual like House Archie art style. They end up going with like different, more realistic or like more horrific in some cases, or like there's a reboot of the Archie line that has art by Fiona Staples instead of art that looks like
Really?
this. Yeah, it's actually like those are some of the Archie comics I actually own because I was like, oh, I'll try this out, and like they're pretty good. But like for them to settle on using the House Archie style for this, I think is a really good choice because I think it makes it funnier than it would be if they didn't.
Oh yeah. The second Predator, there's a Archie versus Predator 2, and it has that like sort of more darker, a little bit more realistic art style, and it's just a totally different vibe.
Yeah, and that's actually like that one's post the like Mark Waid Fiona Staples Archie reboot, and I think that might be why it has that art style. There's a reference in the first issue because Melissa, you and I have both read the first issue of that where Betty and Veronica are gonna like go down memory lane, which is this like weird plot device where apparently you can just like go back in time in Riverdale, which Archie comics have always been weird, is what I'm gonna maintain on this podcast. But that lane is closed, and it's closed by like construction by the Wade Construction Company or something. So like I think that's part of why they don't end up using the like default Archie art style in that book is because they've quote unquote moved on.
I also feel like someone with only a passing knowledge in Archie, like myself, it these character designs have been so ingrained in pop culture that like I know who Archie is and Jughead and Veronica and Betty just like because I've seen them in passing throughout my life. And I feel like if it were to look like what the second volume of this looks like, I would lose who is who. Like I think of the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys comic that we read. Everyone looks a little too samey.
Yeah, and it threw you off of the story a little bit for
And there's
sure.
so many characters in this because it's the whole cast of the Archie comics, I assume. So if they
For the
looked,
most part, yeah.
yeah, if they looked like contemporary comic book characters, I wouldn't know who I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually, is that it helps people who just pick this up on a whim because they're familiar with Archie and like it could be someone who likes Predator and knows of Archie comics, right? But they've still seen an Archie comic in their life. There's no one in this country probably who hasn't seen an Archie comic. So it does help you just pick up the story and read it without having to relearn like the visual language of what an Archie comic is.
Yeah. We move on to mine.
I was gonna say, so we've already talked about some of the events that have happened in the book.
How crazy they get.
Yeah, which looks pretty wild. I told you, Pat, before we started recording, I had a few different options for your question already, but I will let you say your question first before we start.
So my question is, just leading off of what we were talking about, what was your most surprising scene or event that happened in this comic book?
I obviously first read this over a year ago, so I don't remember what my initial reaction was, and I did remember quite a lot going into it, but I remember being the moment where Pop Tate's head explodes.
Yes.
And there's little details like his ear and his
The
eyeball,
ear, right?
and
Like that moment is
part
on
of
my
his
short
jaw.
list for sure. And
Yeah,
it's definitely the ear.
it's like the second page of the second issue, and you knew it was gonna start happening. Like shit was going down because the last it kind of has like an outro panel that's not very, it's like I think it's actually the cover page for the second issue where the Predator is literally under the table at Pop Tate's, and everyone's just chilling and having a good time, and he's under the table, so you knew it was going to go down, but not quite as violent maybe.
It's like talking about how it's like a typical Archie comic except there's a Predator in it. That whole first page of that issue could just be an Archie comic, except there are multiple panels where basically the laser scope of the Predator's rifle are in the panel and reminding you oh hey, real stuff is gonna happen in this comic, and then you turn the page and Pop Tate's eyeball is flying to the right.
Yeah. It's very disturbing, especially since Pop Tate, he just brought them a cake. It was a welcome home. You've been gone for half a day, and it was so sweet. Now you're dead.
Yeah, what got me is that Jughead is still eating the cake with Pop Tate sprinkles on it.
I mean, that's not surprising.
Doesn't he make a comment best not to waste cake?
Yeah.
He did.
There's
he
a
did bring
panel.
it.
Yeah. It's it's gonna taste a little gamey. I don't know if I want to. Yeah, that's a good one. You got one, Matt? Which one threw you for a loop?
So, in the interest of not being repetitive, because I think it actually probably is the Pop Tate moment. I think that that setup and page turn is really good, and Fernando Ruiz just really does draw the heck out of that head exploding. But in the interest of not being repetitive, I think what kind of surprised me the most thinking back on it is that Betty and Veronica are the ones who make it out of this story alive, which I'll elaborate on that because I think otherwise it doesn't quite make sense. In the story called Archie versus Predator, this is really a book about Betty and Veronica.
Yep.
Although, Archie comics are, I feel like, sometimes more about Betty and Veronica than Archie.
That's the secret of Archie comics, I think, right? As a person who, again, has not
Yeah.
read as many of them and may not be quite qualified to make the comment, but Archie's the most boring character in Archie comics.
He really is just vanilla toast.
He's there.
He's there, and he has a couple of stories, but I feel like he's the sounding board for all the other more interesting characters to go do stuff.
He's the vehicle through which Sabrina the Teenage Witch gets to put on a weird avatar mask and
right.
recite demonic language to try to kill a predator.
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of what surprised me, especially because I think in this sort of story, everyone else dies, right? And I think it would be so easy for a writer to lean into either Betty or Veronica dying and then Archie being with one of them at the end. And it's so much more interesting for Betty and Veronica to both survive, kind of actually be friends by the end, and then have a pet predator Archie instead.
Yeah, so that's mine at the end, is the fact that this comic book ends with the real Archie dead and a new Archie taking his place, which is just the Predator medically, surgically altered to look like Archie.
Archie, because Betty was like, hey, I can do this and I am a god.
Which the more you think about gets more and more disturbing.
It's really messed up, actually.
So like she likes Archie for his body. Because the Predator, like, it's not the same person. It's an alien.
But he's as devoted to them as Archie is.
Yeah, and imagine if this was a different art style that was like more serious and dark and grim and moody, and like, because like that final panel is, half of the Predator's face is like looking really upset and worried, and then the other half is just Archie's
smile.
like,
yeah, like
it's
smile.
the body horror Archie version. It's like, oh jeez.
I think it just would have gotten too dark if we had not been like keeping it so high this whole time up until the very
For
end.
me, it got there. Like, I had to take a step back after that. It's like, what did I just read?
Betty smile in that.
What are these teenage girls gonna do to that poor alien? Oh my god.
I think Betty just has PTSD and is gone insane at that point.
Yeah, she's in shock. But to me, this ending makes sense. I would have never guessed, Matt, that one of them would die and then the one would be with Archie, because that's like the beauty of the triangle. I think there's like literally a story that kind of comes to mind from like a random issue from a grocery store where they sort of break the fourth wall, and it kind of says, well, looks like Archie and Veronica and Betty are all gonna always have the circle, and he'll never pick one, and dear reader, that's the way we like it, and like it, so it's like we're never gonna choose, not in the stories that look like this anyway, not in my heart.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, it totally does make sense, and I think it's probably the best ending, because I think Betty and Veronica, like, overcoming their differences to, I guess, not kill a predator, but like do whatever they're doing to that predator is super cool. But I feel like with a different writer, there might have been like, because this kind of gets to give an ending to Archie comics in a sort of weird way, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
so I think there would have been a temptation to like solve the quote unquote problem, right? Like.
Yeah, that would have I feel like that's part of the charm, even though it is inherently like eye rolly, two girls fighting over a guy, I have too much nostalgia for it for me to be like fully reject of it. But I really actually appreciate it in this last issue, number 4, on like page 22, where Veronica is like telling Betty, you know what? We don't have to fight over a boy. Like, you're 17 years old. You'll get over Archie. Get to the panic room and save yourself. Like, your life isn't over. And like, that's like so true, even though they like really hammed up the like, cattiness between them in the first issue, where it just kind of gets a little real at the end, where he's like, yeah, you're 17-year-old.
He's like, hey, this is just a teenage crush. Turns out 50 years of Archie comics have been about like something you'll get over by the time you're 30.
Exactly. So I appreciate that like new age sort of like reality check there.
Yeah.
Like, not everything is about, a boy.
Yeah, and for me there's a good moment on the page before that where Veronica's bashing the predator in the head with a mace and Betty's stabbing it with that cursed knife that they have to kill 2 people with, and they're working together there. Like, again, it just like, I actually really enjoy seeing those characters getting along as opposed to at odds.
Yeah, and honestly, they do get along a lot. It's just they have to throw in the petty fighting about a boy every once in a while. Keep it fresh. Do the same thing over and over again to keep it fresh.
Well, this comic certainly kept it fresh. There's a lot of stuff I thought I would never see in an Archie comic in this miniseries. I'm really actually, after having started to read Archie versus Predator 2, like, I will probably finish it, because they're kind of just walking around with him, and like, again, they're at this point just friends with their with their Archie Predator sort of like.
It's a
boy
direct
toy?
continuation of this
Yes,
story.
yeah, it picks up
Yeah,
exactly where this
yeah.
left off, and they're gonna leave River. No, they wanna go down memory lane to reset time in Riverdale, essentially. Like that's the conceit. But memory lane is closed, so they start driving, and I'm pretty sure at the end of issue 1, they run into the reboot version of Archie, like from the Fiona Staples art series.
Okay. Does Predator Archie talk?
In emoticons still,
Oh, okay.
but they can understand him kind of. And again, like Betty and Veronica have like super broken the fourth wall in a way that it's so different from this one. While continuing to pick up on it, that I would have not been surprised if it was by a different writer, but it is totally by the same writer.
Yeah, I would have no idea how to continue the story from where Volume 1 left off. Like it's just an end point, but wow, they kept going with it.
Like this one is crazy, and I think the second one might get crazier. I will check back in at some point with you.
Wow.
Yeah, let us know.
But I think that brings us fairly cleanly to your question, Melissa, which is more of a meta question than a comics-based question.
My question is, what would your guys' survival strategy be in a predator attack with the rules set in this comic? We can totally use the rules that if you don't have a weapon, he won't attack you. If you haven't already attacked him, he's not going to attack you. And yeah, I think those are pretty much the only rules. But like he's got his like cloaked stuff, and he's got his lasers and his knives and all that fun stuff.
So I spent almost my entire lunch hour talking this over with my wife today, and we came to some conclusions. The first conclusion was that the predator likely would not hunt me because I would not, again, like via the rules of this comic, be a worthy enough threat to be worth hunting.
You'd be everybody else in the town who just stayed
It was
inside.
just like, yeah, that's the thing is like, did Riverdale like actually get trashed, or did Betty and Veronica trash Riverdale? I don't know. But like, I was also wondering like, so if I put a handicap sticker on my car, like, will the predator know not to hunt me? Because it talks in emoticons in this, right? So maybe it understands the symbols, like it would get it, and so it would avoid me. So that's a potential strategy.
He either wouldn't even like look at me because I am nowhere near a threat to a predator, or he would just like casually glance at me, send like a missile my way, and I'd just be splattered on the wall. I don't know. Like I don't feel like I'd be a good. Like I feel like I tried to go like the Dilton route and like try to like do something like sciencey, but that didn't work out for him. So
No, it didn't.
Yeah, there's no point in having a strategy where you go to the cops or you go to the military, because we saw, yeah, obviously, like that's not gonna work.
you want to escalate things with the predator? Come on.
Yeah, I feel like if I were out in public and the predator started attacking, I wouldn't go to a high school. I would probably just go home and then lock all my doors and windows, and then like don't touch anything. Like don't pick up a butter knife. Don't you just kind of like eat with some spoons for a few days.
No forks.
the
Definitely no
radio.
forks.
Yeah, just like some plastic spoons, and you just eat soup and ice cream for a few days, and then hopefully you're not collateral damage.
Okay, so assuming the predator was actually hunting you though, and not you weren't collateral damage in a predator attack, like what's your strategy then? Because that's kind of what I was assuming, is that the predator is actively looking for me.
Yeah, that's true. Well, once again, don't touch any knives or forks. Just keep it chill. I feel like you'd have to walk places a lot. I don't know. Can a car be considered a weapon?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I'd quit my job.
Yeah, I was like, well, I could get on a plane and fly away from the predator, and then Kat, my wife, was like, the predator comes to Earth in a spaceship. You can't,
Got a ship.
you can't get away that way. I was like, okay, all right. Well, can I cosplay as a predator? Would that do anything? Would that be
Maybe
anything?
insult him and get him angry? Yeah.
Possibly. Now, if it's a teenage predator, they're potentially able to be seduced. Clearly in this comic.
Okay, see, that's what I was wondering. Is there Is there female predators? Are there female predators?
Yeah. Also, is it creepy for an older woman to try to seduce a teenage predator?
Well, we don't know how long. Maybe they live a long time, and a teenage is like 50.
Yeah,
Maybe they
Yeah.
for like
could be a
300
Yoda
years.
situation for sure.
Yeah.
Just like calling into question, like maybe just double checking there. But I mean, that would certainly be
To be fair,
worth
he's
an
already the
effort.
one called a predator, so you're fine. No worries.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you have to live, I mean, like Mrs. Robinsoning a predator is not.
And you got to live with the consequences, though. I don't know if
This
that's.
is true.
That's true. But he could do all the cutting for you if you're still not able to like start using knives and stuff because he's like devoted to you. I don't know. I think you guys are underestimating the usefulness of having a predator buddy hanging out in your house, scaring away people who want to talk to you. No solicitors ever. Neighbors that want to come talk to you. No.
Nope.
I can quit my job and like have a really good excuse. But I could probably like make a way to like make money off of it from the internet.
There's gotta be some sort of like rent a predator service that you could come up with, right? Like, hey, do you need someone to mow your lawn, but like warrior style? Here's this predator.
Or just like cut his hair at night and sell it on eBay or something. Oh, I can't cut it with scissors. He might wake up.
Right.
Never mind.
That wouldn't go
No.
well.
Oh, right.
I'll just walk up, like I'll just walk behind him, picking up items of his. If anything falls off ever.
So our strategies are seduce, cosplay as,
Like I'm too.
handicap sticker,
Gift sticker.
and die, I believe, to recap. Does that sound correct? Have I summed it up?
I feel like mine's the most probable, but you know.
Oh, no, yours is
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
Yeah. My husband's take on it because I also asked him earlier today, and his first, like without even thinking, he just kill myself.
Right? It's like,
Totally
oh,
not.
another predator. Well, there we go.
So here's how the
Just end it.
conversation ended up going here, is that by the time we got back towards the house, because we usually take our dog for a walk at lunch, then come back, my wife told me that, because we had already talked about like the handicap sticker strategy, that the predator itself would likely have to be handicapped in order to want to hunt me. Like, it would not consider me a valid threat unless it itself was like somehow damaged or like.
Yeah, it was an interesting conceit in the comic book that this like cursed knife constituted enough of a threat to this teenage predator that he felt like he could kill everyone.
Oh yeah, that's a question I had for our predator expert. Actually, predator expert,
Oh,
is
no.
the cursed
What?
knife anything, or is it just for this book?
Not that I know of. No, I think it's
Okay.
just this book.
I was wondering if that was a predator lore thing or not.
No.
It was such a redirect. It was almost like more confusing to have it there because the whole time Betty, also in the issue where she wanders into the cave and like finds it and stuff, and from then on she's like, oh, I'm the one who cursed everybody, and it's such like a redirect, even though like at the same time it's just the predator, like he's just there to kill people. It's not Betty and her knife, but then they tie it in kind of nicely where she uses it to stab, and then it poofs like the curse is gone or the curse is uplifted, like there was a curse. I don't know, it was very confusing.
Yeah.
Who was the first person they killed with it? Because they said they had to kill 2 people for the curse to disappear, right? Do you guys remember who the
Yeah.
first one was? Because I was having trouble remembering that as I was paging back through the book today.
I also don't know who
It
they
wasn't
killed.
Sabrina, was it?
I don't.
No,
think so.
Sabrina had her head ripped
Oh,
off.
that's right, yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
Going
See, that
around.
was the thing. Is
There's
I
so
don't
many
even.
spines in this comic.
I mean, that's a
So
predator
many.
thing.
Another thing I really liked, which they couldn't have pulled off if the art style was different, were the like memes that they threw in,
Yes.
like the arms
Yep.
clasping. That's from the movie. because that's the only one I've seen, so I recognized it. But I feel like you couldn't just drop that in if the tone was totally different.
It fits the camp
Yeah.
style of the
Yeah,
comic book.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm scrolling. I just don't think I think they only killed one person with the knife. And maybe the predator counts as two people. I don't know.
I've tried to figure it out too, and I got nothing. Like I'm paging back through. I think I've gone through 2, 3, and 4 at this point, and I've got so maybe I don't think anyone got killed by an issue 1. Anyways, I'm sure there must be a second one, and we're forgetting it. Feel free to add us.
Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah, I think that will do it for our discussion of this delight of a book. But before we actually exit the podcast, we have our normal recommendation section where we recommend a book, a TV show, etc. that we think people would like if they like this book. All of us have a recommendation ready to go. So,
Of course.
I'll go first since this was my comic. Um, in a SJW, okay, I'm just gonna say it. Pretty much, unless you don't count Archie comics, like the only comics I've ever read were for this podcast. So most of my context for absurd humor in context of comics, I would relate to something not to just always be like, well, on the SJW Comic Book Club, we read, but that's what I'm going to do. In our season 5, episode 5, we read a Howard the Duck story, and it was called Howard the Duck and the All Night Party. And it was just like 2 issues, something really short. And the premise of it is that Howard the Duck is running for president. And at the time, we talk a lot in the episode about how there was like a lot of political stuff going on that is both very similar and slightly different than the way it is now, but it really was just like very similar, and it was just so funny and so absurd. It's a little bit more serious obviously than this comic, but just the absurd humor of it. I would say Howard the Duck All Night Party is a good story to read.
Sure.
nice. Yeah, like I said before we were recording, like Howard the Duck is still one of my blind spots, so I will maybe check that out, and I will definitely link to the episode of the SJW Comic Book Club that you talked about in our show notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can do my recommendation next because I think I did figure it out. I was trying to think of crossover comics and specifically like crossover comics that are in like the same sort of wild tone as this book. And I think what I've settled on is this is also a Marvel comic book. There's an issue of Power Man and Iron Fist from back in, oh gosh, I'm trying to find the year now. It's 1982 apparently. There's an issue of Power Man and Iron Fist where they essentially team up with the Doctor from Doctor Who and fight Daleks. But
Oh,
because they can't actually say like it's the Doctor and these are Daleks because they're not like it's not licensed and it's like an unofficial
it
crossover.
wasn't a
Like
sanction. Oh, that's great.
no, the Daleks are called Dreadlocks, and I'm trying to figure out what the Doctor is called in there quick.
Actually never seen Doctor Who.
Oh.
So I thought it was pronounced Dalek, but I also have never seen it. I know that they're little robots though, with
Yeah,
lots of little gun-looking things
little
poking
robots
out of
that
them.
can't go upstairs.
Oh no.
They
They
fly
fixed
now,
that. They
so
fixed that. Yeah.
so the Doctor in that story is like known as Professor Gamble, essentially. But
Nice.
like, this is actually a comic I wrote about way back in the day when I had a weird old website slash blog that was not all comics focused. And like, I'll probably link to that post in the show notes also, because like, in the same way that this is just a hoot, like that comic is just a hoot, especially if you're familiar with Doctor Who stuff. So I think it scratches the same sort of vibe of like, what are these two properties doing together?
So it's a hoot. WHO-T. It's a hoot.
Yeah, it's a hoot.
Nice. Nice. Well, the one I could think of is a movie. I'm going to break away from comics because I can't think of any comics that do this one justice. But I will say, if you haven't seen Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, it's also just like a fun horror film that is just like surprising scenes that just make you laugh. I loved it. You should watch it. It was on Netflix. I hope it still is. Highly recommend.
I've not seen it, but is that related to I'm now totally blanking on the name, but like that series of movies that started in the 80s, the This Is My Boomstick
Oh, Evil
movie?
Dead?
Evil
No.
Dead.
It sort of parodies it a little bit, but no,
Okay,
it's something.
because I've seen that.
Heck yeah, Evil Dead is great.
Also in the wheelhouse, I think.
Not to go rogue and throw in a fourth recommendation, but have you
How
guys ever
dare
read
you?
have you guys ever read Doom Patrol?
I have not.
I've read some of the more recent stuff, but I haven't read the older stuff.
Okay, we read, I don't know how old it was. This is also very old, but we also read a Doom Patrol and it was ridiculous and I loved it so much. I loved every moment of it because it kind of was absurd in the way that this comic was absurd. It wasn't as like, funny, but it was so straightly told and like so serious, but everything that happened was just complete nonsense that I just thought it was delightful. Like I really love absurd comics that just don't take themselves too seriously.
You know, Melissa, what like decade that Doom Patrol comic you guys read would have been from?
No, I can tell you that it was written by Morrison, Case, and Hana.
Okay. All right. So it's like an 80s-ish one, I believe then.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it was 80s. I mean, it looks 80s, but I didn't want to be the authority
Yeah.
on 80s
I mean,
comics.
I'm not either. I was just the one I've read recently is the more recent Doom Patrol stuff by Gerard Way and Nick Darrington, which very much I think takes after the Morrison stuff, but like therefore has the same sort of wacky, wild tone. So I think would also be a good fit.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I totally found a note. It's from 1987. It's issue number 19, and it's called "Crawling from the Wreckage." It was really good. I really enjoyed that story.
Nice.
All right, I think that is going to do it for this month's discussion of Archie versus Predator, which was a delightful romp where everyone had their spine ripped out. As always, if you want to get in touch with Pat or myself, you can find us on Twitter as @WattPodcast. You can also email us at waitingonthetrade@gmail.com and read more comics-related goodness at mattreadscomics.com. Melissa, please tell the people again where they can find yourself and the SJW Comic Book Club.
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at SJW Comics Cast. It should be the same on both. And Veronica runs our Twitter, and I run the Instagram. So sometimes we take turns getting lazy and not posting, but it kind of helps if both social media feels like that has a different narration or narrative voice. It's because they're just run by two separate people entirely. I don't understand Twitter. I feel like it's just an enigma. I just don't I don't know how to use it. Like emotionally, like I know how to
No, I
pull
get
it up
that.
and make a
Yeah,
tweet,
yeah.
but like I feel like you got to be part of a cool club to be on Twitter, and I'm just not there.
Yeah, I get that. Twitter can be a whole thing at times.
Yeah.
But I've actually never been an Instagram person. I had an Instagram account for work because my boss made me make one when I was at a marketing agency for a little bit, and I posted not even once before deleting that account. Probably very good for comics related stuff. I think the
It
ability to
is.
post the panels of the favorite panels on your guys's.
Yeah, I really like that you guys do that.
Yeah, that's pretty much primarily what it is for, because I mean it is kind of sometimes a struggle to talk about a very visual medium on a non-visual
You're right.
platform.
Yeah.
Very audio medium, yes.
Yeah. So I think it kind of helps sometimes.
Well, Melissa, thank you again for bringing us this delightful comic. And I am
Yes.
definitely going to read the sequel, and I will report back to the both of you and potentially
Oh,
our
God.
listeners
Please do.
to
Please,
see
thank you.
how wild it is. But until then, good night, everyone, if you're listening at night.
Wow.
Hopefully the predator doesn't, come after you.
Yeah.
And if you do, you've got very well thought out survival tactics that you can use now.
Just keep an eye on your spine. It'll be fine. Don't worry.
More good plans.